to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a Stanford law graduate turned tech entrepreneur, no other than Mr. Rahul Athavale.
Awesome. Daniel, thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate it. Let me share a little bit about myself first and my company very quickly. That's not my passion. Yes, it's something I'm very good at, but what I'm passionate about is what we're going to talk about on this podcast. So, what I do is I started a company after law school. I sold that company to Google. I started another company, sold it to venture capital, really private equity. And then this is the third company. I'm not selling it, but the way I was able to pay for law school, pay for the first two companies is through commodities trading, trading gold and trading forex. And so I am a commodities trader. I was able to raise $3 million for my first company from my own trading. I never took any venture capital. My second company, I raised all my own money, never took any venture capital, and therefore kept all the proceeds and didn't have to give anything up to venture capital. So, what I have decided to do in retirement is basically take what I do and do it for other people. So, this is a copy trading business where people will give me, or my clients will give me anywhere from $5,000 to $100,000. I trade their money for them. The money stays within their control and they pay me a commission of 40%. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. I help them with all the tax mitigation and how you avoid paying capital gains, but you pay different taxes depending on the countries they're in. So that's the company, straightforward. I'm great at it. My clients generally, I'll give you an example. I have a client who started with a $70,000 account 3 months ago. She's making about $30,000 a month on a $70,000 account. So that's what I do. But now let's talk about sex addiction, which is a topic I probably care to talk about more and will help a lot more people.
Yes, Mr. Raul Athavale, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. But before we go deep into our topic for today, I just want to ask what will be your vision and mission in Surfing Trader?
So yeah, that's a really good question. My vision for Surfing Trader is to have $30 million under management, and the vision is I'm the only reason I'm doing this is not because I need or want the money, but that 30% that I take, 30 to 40%, I should to say that I take, almost 90% of it goes to nonprofit organizations, right? So 10% I keep as my income. And then the other 90% goes to my wife and I have started a nonprofit for cats and dogs, a rescue here in Mexico. I live in Mazatlan, Mexico. We bought about 100 acres. So we all the cats and dogs that are street animals, who are injured, who are sick. We are able to take them there with full veterinary care, and take care of them. I have nonprofits that I'm funding in the United States, nonprofits I'm funding in Canada, and my business is their sole form of income, right? And whether it's $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $4,000 a month, that's what I'm doing. So if you are a nonprofit and you are listening to this podcast and you say, well, I need money, I need monthly money to do my good thing in the world, then please reach out to me. And I'd love to talk to you about what our qualifications are to bring on nonprofits into our system.
Well, Mr. Rahul, Book 101 Review have also foundation with helping less fortunate children all over the world. So maybe I'm gonna talk to you later to fund my foundation because we need to help our less fortunate children because they are future generation of our
That,
generation.
that is very,
So
very, very true.
So let's talk about sex addiction. And how do you define sex addiction and how is it different from high sex drive?
Yeah. So the way there's a lot of ways that people define it. There's the DSM-5, which is it's the psychological definition of sex addiction, and I think that would be the best place to start. So let me grab that definition. DSM-5, sex addiction definition. DSM-5. Okay. All right, so this is how it's classified, and there is a distinct difference between high sex drive and compulsive behavior. So it's defined as compulsive sexual behavior, hypersexual disorder, or behavioral addiction. So what does that mean? What does that mean in layman's terms? Somebody who has a high sex drive, and most men have high sex drives, it's not compulsive. And so what does compulsive mean? Compulsive means, suppose you like to masturbate, or suppose you like to have sex with prostitutes. Suppose you're a single guy and you say, well, I have a girlfriend, and I'm really committed to being faithful to my girlfriend, but there's a craving that you have to have sex with hookers. Someone who has high sex drive doesn't feel almost a internal push to go and have sex with prostitutes as much as he or she can. That's one thing. That's one compulsive behavior. The second compulsive behavior is when that person looks at their finances and says, if I go and have sex with this prostitute, I'm not going to be able to pay rent, or I'm not going to be able to pay for my kid's school. And they know logically this is a very dangerous thing to do. I have to pay rent, or I have to pay my mortgage, or I have to pay for my child's school. But they would rather get their drug, which is the dopamine hit. And for them, it's the sex, right? It's the same way that you would look at what's the difference between a recreational marijuana user, or marijuana isn't an addictive substance, but what's the difference between a recreational cocaine user or alcohol user versus somebody who is an alcohol addict or a drug addict? A drug addict prioritizes their drug over everything else, right? So the most important thing for them is their drug, is their cocaine. The most important thing for a sex addict is not his wife, not his kids, not his well-being, not his health. It's his drug, his sex. I'll give you an example with alcohol. I have a friend. I'm a sober alcoholic. I haven't had a drink in 9 years. I'm sober from my sex addiction for 5 years. So let me explain the alcohol. It's easier for people to conceptualize. I have a friend who could never get sober. He actually died from his alcoholism. He had psoriasis of the kidney. His doctor told him, listen, we'll call him John, right? His doctor told him, listen, John, if you have one more drink, you are going to die. This isn't a maybe. It's you have any more alcohol. If you put any more alcohol in your system, you are going to die, right? And he didn't want to die. He's like, Rahul, I don't want to die, but I can't not drink. The only way that I'm not going to be able to drink is if they put me into a box and lock me up. That's the only way I'm not going to be able to take a drink. And so that's what happened. They put him in a box. Now, in the U.S., you can't just put somebody in a prison who hasn't committed a crime without cause. And if they say, I want to be let out, you got to let them out. So he checked himself into a treatment facility for 9 months. He was clean for 9 months, sober for 9 months. And at 9 months, he said, I'm done. And I think I'm going to be okay in the real world. I didn't think he was going to be okay. I had a very bad feeling about it. And within 4 days of him, within 48 hours of him being out of that facility, he was dead. Why? Because he went and he got one beer, and he died. And because the doctor said, one more drink and you will die, right? He knew that. Logically, he knew if I take this drink, it's going to kill me. But that compulsion was so strong in him that he needed to go take that drink, right? So let me explain my story and why, what does this look like with sex? Well, My compulsion was cheating on my wife with women who I was going to give jobs to. Right now, I've always been very successful, and I've always had a lot of money. And money is a very good tool to manipulate people. So what I would do is I would tell women that, hey, if you sleep with me, you'll get a job, right? And these were very, very high paying jobs. Now I would give them something. Now, 5 years ago, the last time I ever did this or ever had an affair or did anything outside of my marriage or committed relationship. But I knew that if I did, oh, and the other thing I would do is I would record the sex and I would put it on a website, right, with my face on it. And I never changed. And that the whole process of doing that was the compulsive process. If a piece of that process was missing, so what would happen if I did the whole sexual encounter and then I didn't post it on the website? It would be like I was in a drunken rage or an alcoholic rage or a cocaine rage, because that compulsive process wasn't complete. And so for me, it was literally like I was in a 4-day bender. So alcoholics, drug addicts have benders, what they call benders, where they're in this like black cloud. They think it's a pink cloud, but it's a black cloud for could be for days, could be for hours, could be for minutes. Depends on the addict and the style of the addiction. For me, it was like a 4-day process where I had to post the ad to recruit the woman, have the conversation with the woman, have sex with the woman, record the interaction, post it online. And then once I was done, I could go about no more than 3 to 4 days before I had enough dopamine in my system where I said, okay, I'm never going to do this again. It was always the same. Daniel, I'm never going to do this again. I'm never going to do this again. 4 days later, I just got to get my fix. I got to get my fix. I got to get my fix. And it was obsessive. That's all I thought about. I didn't think about my kids. I didn't think about my wife. I didn't think about my dogs. I didn't think about anybody other than getting my fix. I needed my fucking fix. And so it went like that. And the problem with addiction is when it started, and I've been doing this for years, when it started, it was maybe once a month or really once every 2 months. Then it became once a month. Then it became twice a month, 3 times. And before you knew it, it was literally every 4 days I was doing this. I spent on my addiction in 1 year almost $400,000 on my addiction, dollars, right? And I couldn't stop. And the only time I could stop. So what happened that I was able to stop? Well, so really, I guess it's been about 6 years now, not 5 years, 6 years. But this is what forced it to stop. At the time, when I got sober 9 years ago, I was running one of the largest I was running a very large money laundering operation for the Colombian cartel. Okay. That's how I was able to spend $400,000 a year on my addiction, and it didn't impact my life at all. I was making $30 million a year. So I was running this thing. I was a raging alcoholic, a drug addict, a lunatic. I got sober. I told my sponsor and attorney said, if you want to get out of this life, you have to turn yourself into the FBI. I turned myself into the FBI. There's a lot of very amazing things happened with that. I'm very grateful. But in the long story short, I went to prison for 18 months. I should have gone to prison for 42 years, but because I turned myself in and I was doing good things in the community, they said, we'll make it 18 months. In those 18 months, I didn't get to do my sexually addictive behavior. So I got a reprieve of 18 months from that. And so my brain got to heal, right? My brain started to find healing. I then, while I was in prison, paid to do phone calls with a therapist and a psychiatrist. So I got to get further healing. So I got to get out of prison with 18 months of healing from this sex addiction. And then what I did was I immediately went and read as many books as I could. While I was in prison, I read as many books as I could on sex addiction. And while I was out, I continued the reading. And what I learned was I needed to go and do specific trauma reduction therapy. Why? When I was a kid, the other thing about addiction, sex addiction primarily, most men who have sex addiction were sexually abused as kids. Most of them, right? I was sexually abused as a child by an uncle. Okay. So, though it was a man who abused me, my target were women, right? The people that so many times people think, well, if you're abused by a man, you're going to be gay. No, that's not actually how it works. Some people become gay after their abuse, but it's not always the case. So I then needed to address the abuse, right? And I needed to address the
Yes.
abuse through certain types of therapy, which is what I did through EMDR and trauma reduction and IFS and a variety of therapies. I addressed that abuse. Um, and through that amount of work, and Daniel, it was an intense amount of work. I was able to free myself. Now, here's the thing that's very scary. Those the sex addiction in conjunction with my laundering of money gave me a worse case, right? Because when they arrested me and they found everything I was doing, they found that I was not only laundering money, but I was also running an escort service, and I was sleeping with the women that were working for me, which is a bunch of extra charges also, right? So it should have been much worse. I should have gotten a lot more time, like 50, 60 years in prison. I got 18 months. And part of the reason today that I support organizations that work with women who want to get out of prostitution is, for me, it's my way of giving back to the world. That, I did things that I'm not proud of for many, many years. And I feel like it's my obligation to society, it's my obligation to the world to give back. It's the reason some of the organizations that we fund are organizations that help victims of sexual abuse, but starting at a young age. Because if I got the help I needed, my abuse started at 7, it ended at 12. But if I got that help that I needed at 12 or 13, I would have taken a very different path in life, right? This isn't blaming the abuser, right? He did what he did, and that's the reality of it. But if I got the help that I needed at 12 or 13, or even at 18, if I got the help that I needed, my life would have taken a very different path than the path that it took. So one of the things that I want to do, profoundly want to do, is help kids through organizations that are already helping kids to understand that there is a better way. There is another way, and they could follow this better way. They could follow this other way.
Mr. Rahul, very well said, and we salute you at what you're doing right now. And I hope you will continue empowering people all over the world. What are some of the common misconceptions people have about sex addiction?
They think it can just it's a misconception I think people have about most addictions, but is that you can just stop whenever you want. That many people say, "Oh, sex addiction is not an addiction." It's a lot of the things that alcoholism faced early on when people were starting to learn about it, or it's the same criticism that cocaine addiction faced when people were starting to learn about it. For men, though, the hardest thing for men, and that I found more than others, women too, is it's hard for men to talk about childhood sexual abuse. And so I think the biggest thing, and there's still a big stigma. There's still a big stigma around sex addiction in society, definitely in Western society and definitely in Eastern society, right? In places, I come from an Eastern culture in India. You don't talk about sex with anybody. You don't talk about it with anyone, right? So for Indian men to go to a 12-step meeting is very hard, but I have been seeing more and more Indian men, Asian men in 12-step meetings, and that's very heartening. I feel very good about that, because I know that our cultures, East Indian, Asian cultures, sexual abuse of children happens at a very high rate. I hate to say it, but it's the reality. Indians hate it when I say that. You shouldn't tell on our secret. Well, it's a problem and it needs to be told on, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
kids who are sexually abused in those cultures very rarely get help, and that pattern continues. So I think the biggest misconception comes from ignorance and then arrogance. And the way to combat that is read books like Out of the Shadows before you make a judgment on what you think it is. Go look at legitimate research on what it actually is. And if you're struggling with this, go to SAA.org and look for a meeting on sex addiction. There's online meetings, there's in-person meetings all over the world. They're anonymous, and it will be a good place to go to get help.
Definitely, Mr. Rahul, and thank you so much for that empowering answer. So let's talk about the success and personal reflection. Can you share a success story that illustrates the power of coaching and recovery of sex addiction?
Yeah, I mean, I could share my own story, right? But I would rather share stories of people who I have worked with. And so one of the things I love about 12-step fellowships is it's this
I'm
process
sorry.
of one person helping another. It's okay. It's of one person helping another person, right? And so I have had the great benefit of sponsoring people and helping them through this process. And one guy, we'll call him Mark. Mark went to prison for sexual battery, right? What's sexual battery? Sexual battery is he had sex with a woman. She was drunk. He was drunk. Uh, she said it wasn't consensual. He said it was, and no one could tell. So they said, "Oh, you're going to prison." And so the problem with this was now most people hear this, most men hear this and say, "Wait, that seems very unfair." Well, the problem with this is he was already in trouble with the law for picking up prostitutes the week before. And in California, that's illegal. You can't have sex with prostitutes. You can't pay for it. And so he got in trouble for that. And then he got in trouble for something else. And so the courts were like, listen, you have a problem. And I think it's just better you're not on the streets of California. So he got arrested. He went to prison. He had to register as a sex offender. And he came out and he went right back to doing it, right back to picking up prostitutes, right back to having sex with women who would get he'd get him a little drunk and have sex with them. And he's like, Rahul, I'm gonna go to prison for life, but I can't stop doing this, and I don't know what to do. And he was again having to do polygraph tests, and it was a complete disaster. Daniel, it was a disaster. It's been about 3 years now. He hasn't done any of these behaviors in 2 years. That first year was hard, and I met with him every day, and we went and got coffee every day, and we talked, and we developed a game plan for every day. And finally, after continuing to do this work, so what people forget is it took years to develop these addictions. It's not going to take 4 hours to get rid of them. I think it's a challenge with success in general in the world we live in today. People want to be instantly successful. It takes time to be successful. And people look at me and say,
Yes.
"Oh, you built these companies. I want to build a successful company." And I say to them, I used to not say it out loud. I say it out loud now. I say, "Well, you don't actually. You're lying to yourself. How dare you? Your actions show otherwise. You need to save 50% of your income for 5 years. Can you do that? No, I don't. I would like to buy my coffee. Well, you don't want to be successful. Enjoy your life the way it is because you're not going to have this life, right? Because you're not willing to do the work it takes to have the life it has." And so, and people don't like that, and I don't care. so, uh, so but what we did is we developed a game plan with him, and he had to go to a certain number of meetings, SAA meetings and AA meetings, and talk about it and develop a support structure. And when he was starting to feel like I want to do something, he needed to call me and four other guys, and we would go. And there were people who had lives that we could take a break from what we were doing and spend time with him. He had to struggle, but he kept on doing it. And before he knew it, he had 1 day of sobriety, and then 2 days, and then 3 days, and then 4 days. And then the biggest challenge, surprisingly, Daniel, came for him when after a year of having sobriety, he wanted to start a relationship with a woman. So he hadn't had any sex for a year, and now he wants a relationship with a woman. And his fear was, this is going to trigger this monster. The monster is going to come back. What do I do? So what he did was, what I suggested is go to a therapist and start the sexual process with your girlfriend through therapy, right? Now, why was that hard? He had to then tell his girlfriend about his sex addiction. But he did it. He did it with honesty. He did it with integrity. And today, 3 years later, he has a healthy relationship with a woman without sex addiction in his life.
That'd be awesome, Mr. Rahul. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, other podcast of mine, because I have abstract essay on each fifth season, abstract poetry and second season, and of course my book 101 review in its fifth season already. People comedy 101 in third season, food 101 in its fifth season too, like my book 101 review, geography 101 in its fourth season, love letters in its third season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, and Movie 101 review in its fourth season, and Music 101 in its third season. Please do listen to them because they empower something to the world. So,
Awesome.
Mr. Rahul, to sum up our discussion for today, what's most important message you hope people take away about sex addiction and healing?
I think the biggest message I take away is if you are somebody who is struggling with this, or somebody in your life is struggling with this, know that this is an addiction, and there are ways to deal with it. This is not a moral issue. This is a mental issue, not a moral issue. Um, and get help, and you can find that help through uh, therapists. And just, you can ask the therapist, do you work with addiction or sex addiction? They'll say yes or no. That's a good therapist to go to. And read books like this one, Patrick Carnes, Out of the Shadows. Start there. You can always email me and ask me, and I would happily direct you. If I can't help you, I'll direct you to people that can.
Yes, people. Let's read this book, Out of the Shadows, highly recommended by Mr. Rahul Athavale. So, Mr. Rahul, thank you so much for
You're
sharing
welcome.
your knowledge to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your serving trader and your recommended book?
Yeah, so if you would like to work with me as a client at the Surfing Trader, or if you're interested in how to be a beneficiary of our nonprofit, just email me at Rahul at thesurfingtrader.com. Rahul at thesurfingtrader.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Rahul Athavale because if you support him, more and more and more empowering knowledge to come, more and more empowering business to come. So, Mr. Rahul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care, Daniel.
Modicon people, see you soon.